What is the difference between pressure and temperature? So usually these two terms are not related that much, but still we can find out difference between them. The very first difference that you can find is on the basis of their definition, right? So what is the definition of pressure? Pressure is the force exerted by the molecules on the container or the wall of the container, right? So pressure is the force exerted by the molecules. It is basically the collision that the molecule does, and due to that collision, if there is some normal force acting on particular surface or a particular area or the wall, then you could say there is some pressure, right? So that is what we call as pressure. Now what is temperature? Temperature, if you describe it macroscopically, it is the degree of measure of hotness or coldness. And if you try to describe it in microscopic way, then you could also say that temperature is nothing but the average translational kinetic energy of the molecules. That is how you define pressure and temperature. So pressure tells us that there are so many molecules. If there is so much pressure we experience by the molecules, so if there are more number of molecules, then we can say there is more pressure that we could experience, or that the system we have is experiencing. What about temperature? Temperature is something which we can say that when molecules are full of energy, they express it with the property called temperature. If they have some energy, then they display it as a characteristic or as a property in terms of temperature. Okay, so this is the pressure and temperature. Now let me tell you of the differences. What are the difference? See, temperature is relevant for all the substances, be it solid, liquid, gas, or even plasma. So any state you have, you can measure temperature of that. But pressure is relevant for fluids only, for liquid and gas, not for solids, because there is no pressure force in solid. Solid molecules cannot, they just vibrate, they cannot translate. So there is no collision in solids, so therefore they cannot apply any pressure force. Pressure force is something when molecules are applying force, right? And they are applying force normal to the surface. So there is no such thing in solid. Next, in when we talk about temperature, temperature, as we have said, is when molecules are displaying their energy, the temperature is the way. And when molecules are colliding, and they are colliding when they are more. If there are less molecules, then collision will be less. If there are more molecules, then pressure and collision will be more. So collision is something that is displayed by pressure, by molecules, and that is what we call as pressure. Now for temperature, there is no 0 Kelvin. It is not a practical thing to come to 0 Kelvin, right? It is not practical. It is impractical. Why? We can prove it also on the basis of third law and second law of thermodynamics. Both can prove this, so we'll see it in the next video. And when we talk of pressure, zero pressure exists, because we can create an environment or a space where there are no molecules. If there are no molecules, of course it will be perfect vacuum, you can say, or then there'll be no molecules to collide, so there will be no pressure. Talking about unit, of course you can differentiate both of them with respect to their units. And the final thing is absolute pressure and temperature. See, absolute pressure is the pressure which is measured with respect to 0 Pascal, whereas temperature, absolute temperature, is something which is measured in Kelvin.